This is day one of the Coffered ceiling project. I just started about 20 minutes ago. All I did so far was put in a few nailers. This is actually the final room. The rest of the house was done. We'll show you a clip of the rest of the house. The rest of the house was done about a year ago. This room we were using for storage, so I didn't do it until now. What you're seeing so far, those nailers are actually going to hold the top of the box that creates the coffer. I use 1x3s. You could rip down plywood. That wood won't be visible. I just use 1x3s because it's easier to buy them pre-manufactured. As far as why they're short pieces instead of just a continuous length, you could use a continuous length. It doesn't really make a difference. I cut them up into pieces, therefore I save some wood. I don't have to measure. I make sure, I like to have them tight into the corners because that's where the two caps are gonna meet. But in the center, it's not really necessary for every inch to be supported. So I leave, I cut them, I take I take my 8-foot lengths, I put them on the miter saw, I cut them into 3 sections, so I get 3, roughly 32-inch pieces. And I leave some space in between. But again, you could run continuous lengths end to end if you want to. Putting them up with 2-inch 18 gauge brad nails. I'm hitting that top cap, so there's no glue or anything needed. Next, I'm going to put my frame up. My frame is a 4.5-inch, it's a 4-inch piece of MDF. Some of it, because this is my final room, I didn't want to buy another sheet of MDF, so some of the frame is being put, I'm using some extra 3/4-inch plywood that I had. You can really use anything. This entire frame is going to be covered, so you could really use whatever's on hand, as long as it's not something that's going to excessively expand and contract and cause issues later on. This is basically, the top cap is all that's going to be visible because the sides are covered by the crown molding. So yeah, I'm going to finish this wrapping around and then I will start putting in the frame. So when it's completed, this is how the Coffered ceiling is going to look. This is a room that I did about a year ago. This is actually a vaulted ceiling, but it's the same concept. So basically what I have is my frame that's actually attached to the ceiling is a 4-inch piece of 3/4-inch MDF, and like I said, anything could really be used. That's just basically a mounting bracket, so plywood could be used. I like the MDF, but I'm actually using plywood for some of the finish because I don't want to buy another sheet of MDF, and I ran a little short. But once the MDF is installed to the ceiling, I use 1x3s, which give me a height off of the ceiling of 2.5 inches, plus the top cap is a 1x6, which gives me a finished height of the coffer at 3.25 inches, which is perfect because the rise on my crown molding is 3 1/8. So it covers, the crown molding comes from the ceiling right down to 1/8 of an inch shy of the bottom of the cap of the coffer, which is perfect. It gives me a little bit of a lip to run a bead of caulk, but it covers any of the rough work. So this again is the finished product. And like I said, I run my box, my underneath support is cut at 4 inches. So therefore, with the 1x3s on either side, it makes it 5.5, and then the 1x6 being 5.5 inches will cap it completely. All right, we'll get back into the other room. So this is my 4-inch strip that's going to get mounted flat to the ceiling, which is going to hold the rest of the frame of the coffer in place. Like I said, this piece is 3/4-inch plywood. I made some of it originally I made it out of MDF. I ran short on MDF, so this is actually some plywood that I had, some refrigerator panels I had left over from the kitchen. Again, anything that could support, that could hold the rest of the frame will be suitable. How I hold it up, with this type of project, you have to understand that you're not going to be able to hit wood underneath your sheetrock every time. I mean, you're not going to be able to hit a joist or a rafter. So a lot of this is supported by the drywall. I've done this multiple times. I've never had any instances where anything has fallen, if even anything is even remotely started to sag off of the ceiling. What we're building is not that heavy, and the drywall itself, as long as it's fastened well, the drywall is capable of supporting it. So what I do, I put construction adhesive on the back. I stick it up, and then I just fire some brad nails in it to hold it until the construction adhesive dries. I use Power Grab Ultimate, which is great stuff. It's very sticky. It'll almost hold the piece to the ceiling without any fasteners. I know some people have mentioned putting hollow wall anchors. You could, if you're worried about it possibly sagging off of the ceiling or falling, but again, you know, I've done this many times. I've always just supported it, the bulk of it, to the drywall, and I've never had any issues. So, you know, but again, everybody does things differently. If you want to put hollow wall anchors, that's, you know, it wouldn't hurt. It's just going to be more time consuming. All right, I'm going to stick this up and then we'll get back. All right, so I have the frame all the way around the room now. And now I'm going to do my cross pieces. So this room is roughly 10 foot by 10 foot, actually it's about 10 and a half feet. So I'm gonna do 4 boxes. I'm gonna split the room into 4 boxes. So there'll be about 4 foot in the center, give or take, after the side frames and the center frame. So what I did is I measured corner to corner, and I found my center point, which is marked right there. I transferred the mark up top, and then I measured over to the left from the center point 2 inches, because my support board is 4 inches. So 2 inches from the center will put the edge of the board, will be the edge of the board, and it'll keep the center of my board on the center line of the room. Then what I did, I found my center point on this side, and I marked that accordingly the same way. Now what I did was from my line that's right to the right of the center point, I found my dimension, which is 60.5 inches, and I cut a piece at 60.5 inches. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run that piece on this wall from the corner towards the center, which I've marked another line, and then use that to set my other side. I'm gonna do it, and then I will show you. All right, now that this piece is up, it runs from the center to the center of the room, and basically I transferred over the line from this wall, not the center line, but the line where the edge of my board will be. I took that dimension from that line to the corner, and that's how long I cut this board. Because now what'll happen, running this piece across, I can just use a full 8 foot length, and as long as I start it at the line that I marked and touch the corresponding board, it'll automatically be spaced correctly. All right, so my entire support frame is up now. I have my 4 boxes. This box is also going to dip out where the door is, so which is okay. So I'll have an outside corner right there. But I have my 4 boxes. They're all framed out. Now what I'm gonna do is I'm going to now wrap, just like I put the scraps of 1x3 around the perimeter, I'm now gonna go on the inside of all these boxes and do the same thing. And that's going to be the the complete frame, after I put my support 1x3s attached to the plywood and the MDF that's glued to the ceiling, then I'll have my nailer for my 1x6. That's the top of the coffer. Now some people may ask, you see that I did all of my measurements off of the wall. I checked my measurements to the other wall to make sure that my boxes are close to square. But what you do have to take into account here is that this is not a perfect science. The room is not square. My room is actually about 1/2 inch off. So I did have to cheat it a little bit. You know, basically what you want is, you want things visually, when completed, you want things to visually look perfect. So if your room is off a little bit, you're gonna have to cheat the boxes a little bit this way, one way or the other way. When we do the crown molding in these boxes, obviously, each piece is measured separately because the box is not gonna be a perfect square. Obviously, I don't wanna leave, because I had a 1/2 inch discrepancy in the room, I had to kick out my left side 1/4 inch to split the difference. I don't know that a 1/2 inch would even be noticeable on a, on a 5-foot box, but I felt that the best way to do it was to split the difference, make each box 1/4 inch off, which, by eye, once completed, will be completely undetectable. If you're in a situation that you have a major discrepancy, I've seen rooms that are 2 or 3 inches off, and sometimes then there's other things that you have to do. I've done coffers before where the rooms were further off, that what I did was I actually cheated on the ends as well. Instead of using 2x8s, instead of using 2x6s, I used 2x8s for the perimeter board and ripped them to 6 inches. So this way I could add, 5/8 of an inch, 3/4 of an inch. You have to do what you have to do. Obviously we're not going to tear apart the room and reframe the walls. So we have to make our job look as perfect as possible, while still building it within, the ceiling layout that we start with. So, another issue that I'm going to run into now that I see is that if you see this darker board, not sure if you could tell by the camera, but right there in the center, the ceiling dips about 1/4 inch, 3/8 of an inch. And what we're gonna do with that is you'll see when I put my 1x3s up, we're gonna accommodate for that a little bit. We're gonna leave the ends a little bit low. We have a bit of play within the crown molding. We are using MDF crown molding. It has the ability to bend a little bit. We don't want to do so too much because then it'll be noticeable. But again, you have to deal with the room that you have. Now, some people may ask, with regards to the ceiling, why am I not covering the ceiling? When I did the drywall in this house, I had the ceilings. The ceilings are just primed right now. You could actually probably see there's a few patches. We did some touch-up work. You can see some pencil circles. We did some touch-up work after it was primed. I had the ceiling, since this was a complete remodel, I had the ceilings prepped completely smooth. We did a level 5 finish on the ceilings. So this way I could build my boxes right over the existing ceiling. I don't have to cover them with plywood. I'm going to be doing the same thing. I'm going to be building wall panels. If you could see, there's a faint line right here. When I did the drywall, I have orange peel on the top section, and my bottoms, where the panels are going to be, is a level 5 completely smooth. If you're not doing a complete remodel where you have the ability to redo the drywall, you can cover the walls and ceilings. I've never covered ceilings. I've always prepped my ceilings, so therefore I could put my panels, I could build my panels directly over the drywall and let the drywall act like the bottom of the coffer. But on wall panels, I have covered walls before with 1/4 inch plywood. The only issue with doing that, and especially with doing that on the ceiling, is that if you cover your ceiling, then you're now forced to make your boxes 4 foot by 4 foot, which for this particular room, that would cause a problem, because we'd actually have to do 3 rows of boxes, because our current boxes sit at about 5 foot by 5 foot, and obviously plywood is 4 by 8. So if we had to cover a plywood seam, we'd have to do, instead of a 2 by 2, we'd have to do a 3 by 3, which would be significantly more work. And it would screw with our lighting. You know, we're going to be putting a hi-hat in the center of each box and doing a 3 by 3, that would give us 9 boxes. 9 lights would be ridiculous for a 10 by 10 room. So, my suggestion, the easiest way to do it is to have the ceilings prepped smooth, and same thing with walls. Have them prepped smooth, so this way you can build right on top of the drywall and have the finished drywall act as your backer. Now I'm going to be painting. When I paint it, I do my wall panels. My whole bottom of the wall, I paint with semi-gloss. So the walls do have to be, really perfect. The ceilings, I do with eggshell. I do eggshell on the entire box. Now, obviously, usually you paint ceilings flat, or ceiling paint, which is even flatter than flat. But because the molding in the box is going to be the same color, you don't want to paint the molding with flat paint. But what I've realized is eggshell works great on the ceiling, because with it overhead, not having any direct contact with the rest of the trim in the house, it's really undetectable once finished, whether it's eggshell or semi-gloss. When you're looking up at your ceiling, you see the little bit of the shine of the in the molding, but it's still flat enough that my ceilings are perfect. My ceilings don't have any imperfections in them as far as nicks or trowel marks or anything. But what you do always have is just the natural fluctuation. Like I said, there's a dip there. It's probably a joist that's twisted a little bit up there, or bowed down, and that you're always going to have. And I've realized that with semi-gloss, that stuff tends to show, whereas with eggshell, it does not. So my suggestion would be to paint the ceiling and all of the molding incorporated with the ceiling with eggshell paint, and then the wall panels with the trim paint, which is semi-gloss. So we'll be back in a little bit. All right, so all of the frames up, all of the 1x3s are in. I just want to show you how that looks. We put some hi-hats in. Now I just started putting the cap on. The cap, like I said, is a 1x6. The top of the cap is going to be visible as the finished product. So when we do this cap, whereas with the 1x3s, we didn't have to worry about the corners or leaving spaces, the cap does need to be perfect. So what we're gonna do is, where they meet, the inside corners, I square off. The outside corners we're going to miter. All right, I haven't filmed in a little while, but here's where I'm at right now on this Coffered ceiling project. All of the boxes are done. You can see here, this one I haven't set the crown yet, so I'll film this one. In the last video, I was building the frame, I was capping it with the 1x6s, and now you can see the finished product with the crown molding. Like I said, the crown molding, the rise on the crown molding is just shy of 3¼ inches, and 3¼ inches is my finished height of the box after the 1x3, which would be 2½, and the cap, which is 3/4. So it gives me just a bit of a lip, which is perfect to caulk. So my caulk line is recessed in. You can see I've also been working on the wall panels. That's not something I'm going over in this series of videos, so I'm just going to focus on the ceiling. But basically what I'm doing now is I'm wrapping the crown around each box, and then I have this lower crown which sits, I have a 1x4, and that's how I tie it into all the other woodwork that I'm doing. I have a 1x4 that sits an inch below the box to give me a roughly 1.25 inch reveal. And now I'm wrapping my second set of crown around the perimeter of the room. So this piece that I'm going to be installing right now is, I have my returns glued on already, and I like to use CA glue to do all my outside corners. This way I glue them in advance. The inside corners I don't. I leave them and I just caulk them afterwards, as long as they're, you know, reasonably tight. I do have a little bit of fluctuation. I use crown stops, but I do have a little bit of fluctuation in the ceiling, you know, so I have to cheat some of them a little bit. I have to widen the angle or decrease the angle, but you know, like that to me is acceptable, because this is paint grade. This is going to be caulked and painted. If it was stain grade, I'd have to probably get a little bit tighter on some of these miters, but again, because of the fluctuation in the ceiling, that's acceptable. Now this piece, basically what I'm gonna do, this is going to cover that and fit right in there. I'm gonna have to just push it in. I can't use both hands right now because I'm holding the camera with the other one, but that'll go there. And again, I have my returns glued on already with CA glue. I go over the edges with the sanding block before I put it up. Saves me some time later.